My guest today is Rand Fishkin, the founder of SparkToro and previously co-founder of Moz and Inbound.org. He has dedicated his professional life to helping people understand and do better marketing through Whiteboard Friday, his blog, and most recently his book, Lost and Founder, where he talks about a painfully honest world of startups. Welcome, Rand. It's an honor to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, Sandro. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. While I was having some inspiration and doing research for this conversation, I stumbled upon a sentence that apparently your grandfather told you when he helped you to start Moz. And it reads like this: speak from a place of humility and help others without thought of return. And you go on and mention that most of the positive things that have happened in your career can be traced back to that advice. And most of the worst things came when you strayed from it. So let's maybe start our conversation there. What good has come to your life from helping others? And when have you forgotten that very lesson and had to pay the price?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that my career is sort of an odd one in that, I started Moz originally as a blog. The company I'm sort of best known for, probably still, hopefully SparkToro eventually overtake that, but started that company as a blog. And then so that it built up kind of an audience before it built up a revenue model. And as a result of that, I've always had lots and lots of conversations and connections and, met tons of people through my work kind of as a creator of content. I speak at a lot of conferences and do a lot of webinars and interviews like this one, right? And so I get to meet wonderful people like yourself from all over the world. And when I help those people, which is, very, very often, right? So, maybe we'll do this interview and 2 weeks from now, you'll say, "Hey, Rand, you mentioned this piece of stuff. Could you introduce me to that person that you talked about?" Or, we had the pre-conversation before this interview started. You mentioned you're going to Italy and, maybe I have some tip on some place to go, right? And then 3 years from now, we find ourselves in Italy together and we meet up for lunch and it turns into this wonderful friendship. That kind of thing happens to me all the time. Just this serendipitous, beautiful human experience of helping people out and having them help me in return, right? They introduce whatever I'm doing to people in their networks. They want to amplify it. They see me saying something on a social media platform and they engage with it. And so that social algorithm, picks up that engagement and then amplifies it to more people. It's kind of wonderful, right? I think it's the best part of just interacting with other people is that you naturally form connections and want to help each other. On the flip side, I had a point in my career, Sandro, where I got very cocky, very arrogant. I thought that. So this was in my last couple of years as CEO at Moz. I had taken the company, granted, right? We had grown very rapidly. We were growing at 100% year over year. And as soon as you start getting into the millions of dollars, that doubling effect works really fast, right? So we had gone from, a few $100,000 when I took the CEO role to $30 million in revenue in about 7 years. And when that happened, I thought anything I touched was going to turn to gold, right? Like I could make this new product for this new audience and it would just sail, it would be successful. I did not validate that with my network. I didn't talk to customers about it. I didn't get input or feedback. I just sat in my office with my chief product officer and a whiteboard and thought I was a genius. Oops. You can imagine the rest, right? It did not go well. Moz had a year where it really, really struggled kind of after that product launch, and then spent a significant amount of time trying to recover and get back on track as an SEO software company. It was brutal. So the book kind of details that and a bunch of other ups and downs as well.
And how, in hindsight, how do you think you came out of that? Like, what was it, like a specific, let's say, book you read or insight you had, or was it just a lot of work on yourself and conversations with others that kind of got you back into the kind of, flow of life, how you described it very beautifully in the beginning, that kind of follows the advice that your grandfather gave you?
Yeah, I think it was a slow process. I probably had a lot of very, very, very bad days, many months of very bad days. And I think, to be honest, one of the things that woke me up out of that, two things in particular. One was, I detailed this in the book as well, an experience I had called CEO swap. At least that's what we called it. So a friend of mine, Will Reynolds, runs a company in Philadelphia called Seer Interactive. It's a web marketing agency, digital marketing agency, and awesome group of people. It's grown and become one of the most successful small agencies in the US. And Will and I swapped roles. So I basically became the CEO of Seer for a week. He became the CEO of Moz for a week. We swapped emails. We moved into each other's houses. I took care of his dog. Yeah. So it was, a very weird but intense sort of experience. And I got to very much see the consequence of a lot of my actions, right? That the folks at Seer, who had been Moz loyalists for a long time, were using other products, and I saw how they were using them. I got a lot of humility about what was actually going on with customers, right? I spent real time with real people, building real relationships like I should have done. And I think the second thing was that when that product launched, which was actually right after the CEO swap experience, I came back to Seattle, and the product launch was just a massive marketing success and dismal product failure. So I've never been part of anything else like that. It was so strange. We had built up so much excitement around this product. There were literally a few 100,000 people, I think, on the email wait list to get
That's nuts.
Access, which is nuts, right? For a web marketing software company, I think it was something in the 180,000 range, right, of people who signed up for this. And the open rates were super high. The click-through rates were super high. People were trying it left and right, and they were infuriated and disappointed. They were like, wow, you really built up this thing and it sucks. It is terrible. And so I think that next year of humbling also helped me turn it around.
How do you explain such a failure to your employees? I mean, whether you're the CEO or you are, a marketing leader and have launched such a campaign, and then it doesn't actually turn out the way that you planned it.
I mean, I think it was relatively easy to explain because everyone inside the company knew that it was not good, right? They knew that we'd been working on it for 2 years. We'd had multiple different product and engineering people come in, sort of cycle through, and nobody was proud of or excited about the product. We knew it was kind of going to suck, and there was all this pressure to get it launched anyway. It's very weird being a venture-backed company, right? And having kind of this pressure on you to grow fast or die trying, right? And
Right.
so we were doing both. We were growing fast and dying trying.
Yeah. I mean, I think like that's it's also an experience that I made twice. When you are under the pressure of having to grow by a certain amount every year, because that's what you basically promised
That's right.
the investors, and everyone else in the company kind of has to follow. Do you, at the moment when, let's say maybe 1 or 2 months before the launch, did you realize where you were and that it's not going to be the product that it should be, and you launched anyways, and everybody kind of
we all just sort of braced for this bad launch, and then we were like, okay, we'll do this. The only way to get it better is to launch it and then fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we just sit around continually tinkering on this thing, nothing is going to improve. We obviously, I think in retrospect, we did not have the team that we needed, right? Like one of the problems that I definitely had was I was not good or willing to fire people who weren't performing, right? And we had a lot of those folks. That's not to say, I think they were probably great people. I think they were probably great engineers. I think at other companies they probably did great. I'm sure you've seen this as well, right? It's not
Absolutely.
you, it's not them. It's just not a match, right? And so
exactly,
I just needed to bite the bullet and let those people go and bring in some new people, and I didn't do that. That was dumb, right? There's no reason not to do that. That's what the CEO's job is. Your team's not performing, you get a new team. I think the other thing was how we built it, right? What we should have done, obviously, in retrospect, is built a small portion of it, launched that, had people use that small portion, built on top of it, 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 right? Instead of, hey, let's try and build the whole huge platform all at once and then launch that whole big thing. That's super dumb. Don't do that. So yeah, I mean, the good part is that I think this was a lesson I really learned and then took away for SparkToro. So when SparkToro, we did a bunch of things really differently. We're not funded by venture capital, right? We took investment dollars in a really creative, unique way. We built our product over a long period of time. It was basically, about 9 to 10 months to build the first version. We beta tested that with a small group. We grew the beta. We grew the product. We grew the beta again. We invited a second group of people. We had them using it. We were watching usage rates. Were people coming back? Were they actually getting value from the data, et cetera, et cetera? And then we did a big overhaul based on all the feedback. And because we'd raised enough money from investors in this creative way, we had two things that almost no venture-backed company has. One was time. We had a lot of time. Like we still have, even without revenue, we could go another almost 2 years without revenue on our capital, and we were able to be very, very. What do I want to say? We could be profit-minded rather than growth-minded.
Right.
Right. So instead of aiming for how do we grow at the maximum rate, we could aim for how do we get to profitability and survive, and then keep tinkering and adding and improving over time. So we did not have an MVP launch. We had a pretty exceptional product at launch. Like it was, I don't know if it was the best thing in the world, but it was good enough that I think a lot of folks who looked at it were like, wow, this is a very polished product. This works really well. It is not buggy. It's not laggy. It doesn't have missing elements. It is well designed. It's clearly been through a bunch of iterations, and it had that really, really helped.
And before we come to this, also in my experience, much more sustainable model that you just described, many listeners of this podcast are still in the role of, a marketing leader, marketing manager at a venture-backed startup in where growth is the priority. If I'm a VP of marketing or a CMO in such a company, have you seen any remedies against that I can do when I'm in this situation? Or as you're saying, get out there and try to find a company that is not only going and for growth. Do you have any advice for people that are in this situation that you found yourself in?
Yeah, I think honest reflection is required, and we as marketers have to be careful not to put lipstick on a pig. That that's just not that is not going to make for an enjoyable experience for you. It's going to make things suck for your team. And so having an honest relationship and conversation with whoever's running product and with the CEO and probably with the board of directors as well, to say, hey, the thing we are building, the thing we are getting ready to launch, I would urge us not to rely on that for growth right now. I would urge us to put that in front of a private beta group, get those people using it, tinker with it, improve it, get it amazing. Once I see the metrics looking like this, X or Y or Z, whatever those numbers are, once I see recidivism rates, people coming back, whatever, week after week or month after month, or daily active users, or whatever metrics you need to use for your business, it's very different for consumer versus B2B. Then I will go take this to market, right? Then I will go broadcast and amplify this. But the last thing you want as a marketer is a product that is not generating excitement and loyalty among your customers, that is not generating amplification. And the reason that's so painfully hard and terrible for marketers in particular is because all of the marketing systems out there right now are algorithmically driven, right? The ones that will help you the most, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Reddit and YouTube and Google rankings and Twitter and you name it, right? Every ad platform out there, from Taboola and Outbrain to Google Display Network to Facebook advertising, every single one of them is all driven by what is the rate of engagement? What's the, are you relatively high in terms of your click-through rate, relatively high in terms of your engagement rate, compared to all the other people who are bidding on those terms or trying to rank for those keywords or trying to appear in those social feeds. And so if you don't have very high engagement because you have a product that resonates with your audience and customers, guess what? You are going to suck in those algorithms. Those algorithms are designed to push you down. They are designed to make your cost of acquisition very high, your cost of click-through rate very, very high, and your visibility very low. Don't play that game. That game sucks, right? That game is so painful as a marketer. You come back and your numbers look like shit, and it's, in a way, it's not your fault, right? But in another way, it is, because you didn't have that hard conversation with the chief product officer, with the CEO, with the board of directors. You did not have that hard conversation where you told them, hey, friends, this is how these systems work. And I cannot smear lipstick on this pig and expect to take it to market and have it perform well. Everyone is going to see through it. Or if they don't see through it initially, they will see through it as soon as they try it. Look at these metrics. Look at our numbers. This product is not resonating and therefore will not receive amplification. And therefore, every impression that I get is driving down our algorithmic ability to reach more people at a lower cost. Don't force me to do that. Don't throw bad money after good, right? Keep investing in the product. And when it reaches the metrics that we need, then let's go push for growth. Not until. Until then, let's use the capital that our venture investors have given us. Let's be very cost conscious, and let's survive. Let's survive and if we can, get to profitability and keep tinkering with this product until it reaches an amazing point. And then we can invest in growth. I think in a lot of ways, Sandra, this is what's supposed to be meant by the like product market fit model, but it's come to mean a whole bunch of things that it shouldn't. So,
yeah, I mean, you're describing, I think, an uphill battle that a lot of marketers face.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, as you said, I think it's not really our fault, but then also if you take ownership,
Right.
Then it really is, right?
Right.
And then,
as soon as you put in that credit card to Facebook ads or to Google ads, right?
Right.
It's your fault.
Right.
As soon as you do that and you haven't had that conversation and prepared the team for what's going to happen, you're on the hook.
And that's another thing. I mean, that's something that I see a lot happening as well when there is money around, is I almost see like the kind of inverse happening, that when you have a lot of money, creativity goes way down, because now you just try to throw money at your problems, basically.
Yeah.
How do you prepare your team for that? I mean, let's say you have actually found your growth levers, and you it actually makes sense, to invest a certain amount into your growth because your product works and it amplifies itself, as you just described. How do you kind of prevent this from happening? Also, maybe like when we look out into SparkToro's future, 10 years from now, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I think a big part of that is continually optimizing and investing in sort of three things, right? One of those is your marketing engine. Like you want to build a marketing engine that scales with decreasing friction, right? A real flywheel, as opposed to kind of the boulder pushing of just buying ads, right? Throwing money at Google and Facebook, because each cost of a new customer is basically the same as the last one. You're not gaining efficiency over time. So
Right.
that's the first one. The second one is a really iterative product model, where you are constantly releasing things and improving the product and having conversations with customers. I like to have those very directly, just as the CEO. Like I don't think there's a substitute for CEO is regularly talking to lots of customers, and they are giving you honest feedback, and they're telling you whether they're using the product or not. And you are watching the metrics too, right? Like Casey and I watch very closely. All right, how many of our customers are actually engaging with SparkToro? How many are coming back at least once a week? How many are coming back at least once a month? Oh, okay. We got about 20, I think it's around 20%. 20% of our customers who paid for the product last month, but logged in less than 2 times. Well, that's not great, right? Like let's ping them, see what's up. Some of them, it's fine, right? Maybe they don't need it, whatever. Maybe they want to keep using it in the future. It's okay. Let's just watch that number, right? If it gets bigger, we got to be very careful, right? I actually love, we use a tool called Profitwell, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's very popular. It's free, right? It's awesome. It just plugs in with Stripe and our payment processing system, and shows us, right, how many active versus non-active customers, right? So they give you this number of like at-risk monthly subscribers. Great. Look, I can track it right in there. It's so simple, right? It's so simple to see that and to realize what's going on. And I think that's the second piece, right? That constant iteration and real conversations with customers, and having that connection at the high level. I think what really sucks is in a bunch of companies where you have customer service people who are like 5 levels removed from the CEO.
Absolutely.
And they're the ones talking to customers. And then, right, my favorite one of this is like, it's the Travis Kalanick thing, right, from Uber, where he like gets in the Uber himself and he's a total shit to the driver. And he doesn't really understand how his own product works. And he doesn't understand why the driver is making X or Y or Z. My God. I mean, that level of disconnection, that's really painful to see. The third and last thing that I think you need is a team that cares deeply about this, that's all focused in the same direction. That's a culture building exercise. Right? That's an exercise in how do I get not just the right people on the bus, but also get them all pointed in the same direction, thinking about the same kinds of things, having, sort of the emotional maturity to handle these problems, and a low power distance between yourself and your team members. Right? You very much want that in startup types of organizations, so that someone who's working customer service can come right to the CEO and be like, "Hey, Sandro, I got to talk to you.
Right.
We got a real problem. You need to fix this." Right. And not, oh my God, that's the boss. I should probably run away.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the three things I think can help solve it. None of those are easy. My God. No wonder, right? No wonder startup success rates are so low.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one interesting aspect of those three, I think especially the first one, I hope that most people understand that, every dollar that you put into paid is just, a dollar lost in a way. And then I think people have kind of caught on to content also thanks to you. One thing that I see happening more also in marketing more and more, which I appreciate, is customer research. But what I see happening oftentimes is that people go into customer research with a kind of end result in mind. And they don't really let the conversation flow and the customer really speak and try to steer the conversation in a certain direction. Have you, when you now look forward, I mean, you obviously with SparkToro are in the customer research space, and so how have you approached this? Have you always sort of felt that you are really good at this? Or how have you developed your customer research skills? Because I think even though a lot of companies say they're doing customer research, there is oftentimes not really an active listening happening. So that because then it becomes even worse, because then you are building something and telling everyone that your customer told you that. So everyone has confidence in the wrong solution.
Yeah. That's definitely a pain point among a lot of people. I have a weird suggestion here. This is going to be unusual. I think you should hire an agency. Here's why. I think that internally you have your biases, right? They are naturally occurring, and it's very, very difficult to break out of them. But if you find a good agency that can do customer research, oftentimes, by the way, I recommend using folks who are focused on conversion rate optimization. The reason I like those kinds of agencies is because the conversion rate optimization agencies look at customer lifetime value, and they look at how you acquire customers through which channels, and they look at where people are coming to, which landing pages, and then they ask the questions like, what makes some potential customers convert, and what makes others who look like those customers who converted not buy your product? And through those conversations, especially when they're removed from your company, when they're coming from an external force, I think you learn a tremendous amount. And I did this at Moz a couple of times. I did it again. We just did it again with SparkToro. We used Conversion Rate Experts, which is one of the companies I used at Moz. It's great. You get truly unbiased stuff. They designed 2 surveys, one for our paid customers, one for our free users. They had me send an email with a specific, format. I edited it a little just to be in my tone and voice. We sent that to all our customers. We got a very high rate of response. We now have hundreds. I think we have almost half of our paying customers filled out this survey, which was awesome. Very nice of them.
Yeah.
And then something like 700 odd free users filled it out too, right? So we have like deep data about what's going on here. And we learned a ton. Like we learned that a ton of our conversion rate optimization problem for SparkToro, because we have a low conversion rate. I think it's about one out of 150 to 200 free users convert to a paid plan, which I think is low. And one of the biggest problems, in fact, the biggest problem was you don't have data in my country. So Sandro, right? You're in Switzerland. You come to SparkToro. You're like, okay, you don't have any German data. You don't have any French data. I don't see any Italian data. I can't remember. What's the other language that's spoken in Switzerland?
Romansh, but that's very niche. I mean, okay. I would be super impressed if you would have them as well. But you're right. I mean, I actually tried out the product and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the message from CRE to us was really clear, right? Crystal clear. It was basically, you need to do two things. You need to make it super clear up front for anyone who's coming from a non-English speaking geography that this is primarily English language for now, and tell them if they want to sign up for an update, right, to get updated when it launches in their language and region, to put in their email address. That's super smart, right? That'll remove a bunch of that uncomfortableness if you come to the site and it's really obvious. And the second one was basically to grow into other languages next year. So I think the two that are most popular are German and Spanish. So that's what we're going to try and add next year, and then hopefully some more in the future. But I mean, that made a ton of sense. Now, when I look at our conversion rate, I'm like, oh, look, we're converting almost, something like 1 in 40 free users from English language regions.
Right.
And almost no one from non-English language regions. That makes a ton of sense. Our conversion rate is actually much higher than I think it is. The problem is just that our traffic is coming from places where we don't serve. Awesome, right? Like, oh, wow, this solved the problem. And there were a bunch of other things, right, that we learned from that. But you get this kind of unbiased external expert, so worth whatever you're going to spend, $20, $30, $40,000 with one of these agencies. You will earn that return on investment in a month.
It's interesting because I think it is kind of a controversial answer, right? Because the common wisdom is to you need to do it yourself because then you get the intuition for the customer and so forth. And the bias, though, is just really, really hard to circumvent.
Yeah, it is. I love agencies too because they see your problem over and over and over again. So they get pattern recognition, right? They're like, oh yeah, SparkToro, it's doing this. You know what? We solved this for 6 other companies and we've seen it in 12 other companies. And here's when it went well and here's when it went badly. And
they also
you cannot get that internally.
And they also don't care about your darlings, right?
Yes, they don't. They don't. It's funny.
Yeah.
You know what? A lot of people have told me. They have this thing where they say, as the founder, no one will ever care about your business as much as you do. And I mostly agree. But when you get a good agency, they care as much as you do. And the reason they care is because you will either use them again or keep paying them if they do a great job, and you will stop if they don't. Right? And so they actually do care just as much. It's not that that's not true with employees, but it's so much less true with a full-time employee, right? There's this, well, it's a pain in the ass to fire me. It's a pain in the ass to hire someone new, right? The relationship isn't as obviously connected to the transaction and value versus the agency model. And so, yeah, when we've used agencies, I think we've used, well, between agencies and contractors, 7 or 8 different ones at SparkToro now. It's awesome. The other awesome thing, we keep our costs incredibly low and super variable. Right. So, we can have months where, okay, we're going to spend $28,000 on this contract or whatever. And then the next 3 months, no contractors for a while. Let's cut our costs. Great. super
Right.
variable as opposed to like a high fixed cost model. From an economic perspective, macroeconomic perspective, this is a beautiful thing, super beautiful thing, because you employ lots and lots of small businesses instead of sort of a few giants having all the control. And that makes for a much more secure and robust and wealth spreading economic picture. So
True.
you can think of yourself as also fighting against income inequality when you do this.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting notion, actually, because we think about this a lot as well. For our company, it has also a lot to do with kind of risk mitigation, right? Because if you hire a lot of employees and you need to train them, there is also a lot of risk in that. And what I would be super interested about is like, which areas do you think that are very well suited next to customer research to outsource, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think we will almost certainly outsource our digital advertising, right? Have somebody else run. As I, I don't personally know, I probably know more than about 90% of founders about digital advertising. And that makes me know enough to know that I don't know more than 99%, which makes me want to get an expert, right?
Right.
And so I want a third party. We probably won't start running a robust digital advertising program until we're better known. So I would say SparkToro
Makes sense.
probably will start. Yeah, because you know the advertising model, right? If your brand is well known and liked and trusted, and you have a big audience, then retargeting, remarketing, and brand advertising, all of that stuff works really, really well, and you draw a lot of clicks. And if you're not well known, you pay high rates, you don't get good click-through rates, et cetera. But so I will almost certainly do that. And I would urge almost everybody to do that as well. Like outsourcing to an agency just makes so much sense, especially because Google and Facebook are so abusive, so extractive. I don't know if you saw the news. What was it? A couple weeks ago? Yeah, 3 weeks ago. So right at the start of September, Google took away almost 30% of paid search data. So they don't tell you what words and phrases you're bidding on or what sent you traffic. They claim it's for privacy reasons, but it has driven cost per click up dramatically because people can't use negative keyword matching, and they can't optimize their ads anymore, and they can't target as well as they used to. They can't make good landing pages like they used to. And so Google is essentially juicing their revenues at the expense of all the rest of us. And it's only with the really savvy and sophisticated agencies who have tons of data from tons of clients that they can start making those cost-saving optimizations. Sucks, right? It sucks for everybody, but I'd much rather give my money to an agency and have them make my ads better than give it to Google, knowing that I'm throwing a bunch of it away.
And actually, kind of going off of that tangent, since maybe you can quickly just give like a 2-3 sentence description of what SparkToro does.
Oh, sure.
And what your vision is for marketing over the next 10 years. And I guess the vision behind SparkToro is kind of linked to that vision as well. So I would be super interested in what you're thinking was behind starting SparkToro and looking further out for marketing.
Yeah. So to your first question, what is SparkToro? That's a very fair one. Maybe I should have mentioned that previously.
No, that was my fault.
We just assume if you're listening to this show, obviously you already know what SparkToro is. We'll try to
exactly.
So it's a platform for market research and audience intelligence, and that just means you can plug in any audience you can describe with the words and phrases they use online meaning in their social shares and content and that kind of thing. Or words and phrases in their bio, their job title, things they're passionate about, or people who follow a particular source, visit a particular website, use particular hashtags, etc., you can instantly discover what any audience reads, watches, listens to, follows. So if you're doing, right, if you're trying to broaden your marketing reach, you want to do digital PR, you want to pitch to be on podcasts, you want to find good speakers for your webinar that are going to bring the right audience with them. You want to get the right social media accounts to amplify that blog post you just published. You want to find people to do co-marketing with who are going to reach the right audience. You want to go do direct advertising, right? Reach out and sponsor some event, or find a YouTube channel that's going to really resonate with your crowd, or you want to do more targeting on your display and social advertising, right, to the right audience. For all that stuff, this data is great, right? I plug in architects in Los Angeles, and SparkToro can tell me which podcasts they're listening to and who they follow on social, and what websites they visit, and the YouTube channels they subscribe to. I plug in, what was the, I was helping someone with people who are in the vaccine shipping industry, because the pandemic, they were essentially trying to reach this market of people involved with logistics for vaccines, which is fascinating market. And they're like, I don't know anything about this market. I have no idea what they pay attention to. But yeah, sure enough, I was able to find basically like epidemiologists and logistics people, and what they followed. And I was like, hey, here you go. Here's this. Check out these results. And it worked great. So that's what SparkToro does. My vision, so let's see, I try not to think 10 years down the road. I think nobody's good at that. But I think 5 years, I feel like I can do, right? 4 or 5 years, I feel like I can do. And the thing that seems really obvious to me, Sandro, is Google is taking more and more of the clicks for themselves, right? They are getting more aggressive with advertising and less generous with the data that they share and the usefulness you can get from the data that they share. And Facebook's doing the same thing, right? What was it? Maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, the average Facebook page engagement rate was like, 10% falling to 5%,
Right.
then 2%, right? And people were complaining like, 2%, this is terrible. I can only reach 2 out of 100 of my people who've liked my page. And today the average is 0.09%. So
it's like organic is non-existing. Yeah.
I mean, Facebook organic is just, it's done, right? Twitter, it's getting harder. LinkedIn, it's getting harder. Reddit, it's getting harder. Instagram, it's getting harder. You name it, right? Every platform is just getting more and more difficult to reach the audience you want to reach. So my vision for the future is that marketers who want to do a great job of getting their brand well known so that digital advertising and conversion rate optimization, all these other channels can perform well for them, are going to have to be in all the places that their customers already pay attention. You want to be on the podcast that digital marketers listening to if I'm trying to sell them a marketing product, right? If I'm starting a new lighting design studio and I want to reach architects and interior designers, I better be known to them through channels they already pay attention to. What's the forums that they read? What are the subreddits they subscribe to? Who do they follow on Twitter and LinkedIn? What Pinterest users are they subscribed to, right? What YouTube channels? All that stuff, if I know all of that and I can market in those places, especially if I can do it organically, right, with a real connection, man, sky's the limit, right? I'm going to do so much better than my competitors who are just bidding on keywords and display.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I mean, first of all, when I listened to you describing SparkToro, it was funny. I kind of had a flash. I obviously never thought about this for the past couple of years, but I remember succinctly of you posting a couple of years ago, kind of a super kind of scrappy guide on how to kind of pull together influencers from different sources and then kind of putting them in a Google Sheet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that this doesn't exist yet in that sense. I mean, I guess there is like some of your competitors who are doing something like that, but since a lot of people are still doing that manually, and pretty much every marketer that I know does that.
You have to do it, right? You got to
right, you have to do it.
Yeah.
So that just came to me. So that's that's kind of funny. So I guess you kind of scratch your own itch there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty natural for a founder. The weirdest thing to me, Sandra, is when we talk to lots of marketers, obviously. And when I talk to folks like yourself, they say, oh yeah, everybody has to do that. You got to figure out what sources your audience is paying attention to and then go be in front of them. There's no word for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to get your rankings higher in search engines in Google and get traffic from Google, we call it SEO.
Right.
If you're trying to pitch journalists and get coverage in newspapers, we call it PR. If you're trying to improve your conversion rate, we call it CRO. If you're trying to improve your Google ads, we call it SEM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or paid search or whatever. There's no word for the go figure out what your audience pays attention to and then sort of be in all those places in all those potential ways.
True. It's kind of especially when I think back at like the times where I worked in-house as a marketer, like that was, I always just called it like modern PR in a way. But there is not really a term for that. That's true. And I would still like to go deeper there because I think I saw an article from you who were that was kind of called the Wall Street Journal problem or the Wall Street Journal marketing problem. And I think that's exactly also one of the issues there, because maybe can you quickly describe what you meant by that?
Sure.
And then also kind of how that ties in with the product. And I know we need to be we have about 7 more minutes or so, but maybe we can go into that real quick.
Sure. So, all right, the Wall Street Journal problem, very easy to explain. You're a marketer. You walk into a room and your boardroom or whatever, and you say, okay, this is the audience that the executive team told us we need to reach. And we've done some research. Here are the places we think that we can reach them. And the CEO says, no. I want you to get me in the Wall Street Journal. I go golfing with our customers every week and they read the Wall Street Journal. You get me in the Wall Street Journal. And you kind of have this like, what is wrong with this person? What in the world is going on? And what's going on is there's a prestige publication bias, right? Essentially, executives have their media that they read and pay attention to. It might be the New York Times, right? It might be whatever it is, the Guardian in the UK or something, right? But there's this prestige publication that their parents and their grandparents read, and they want their parents to be proud of them. And so they want to be in the Wall Street Journal, right? And it's not going to get you customers. It's not going to help your, actual conversion rate. It's not going to really do anything for your marketing, but they want to be there because they want to be there. And one of the things that we have found that's very effective is to say, we have data. Here's the data. 4% of architects who you told us are our primary buyers, 4% of them engage with the Wall Street Journal in some way. They visit the website online, or they share a link, or they comment on the account, or they follow them on one social platform or more, whatever. 4%. And 60% engage with this publication, and 47% engage with this publication, and 32% engage with. So are you sure you want me to spend 10 times the effort on something that's going to reach 1/10 the audience?
Right.
And then oftentimes that executive will say, no, that's not a good move. You're right. Let's put the budget where our audience is because I want to move the needle on that. Or they'll say, I want the prestige, get me the prestige. That's what I'm hiring you for. Okay, fine, right? We all know what we're in for. That kind of thing happens too. But good to be on the same page about that. Wall Street Journal problem is a solvable problem. But you need that number.
Mm-hmm. Good point. So I think very, very, very last question. If I'm a marketer today and I am doing, some customer research, or let's say I am doing some interviews a couple times a year, and I engage with maybe some guest bloggers. What is the highest leverage activity that I can do as a marketer when it comes to customer research and getting the word out, also in conjunction with what SparkToro does? Because I think that's where the power lies as well.
Yeah. Let's see. So I think SparkToro is a great tool for audience building and sort of, digital PR and audience development and reaching people in the places they're going. For customer research side, the kind of side of understanding your customers, the thing that I most recommend is take your customers, if you possibly can, the list of email addresses, if you have it. That's like the most valuable thing you can do. And either develop in-house yourself or work with an agency to develop a survey that's going to ask them questions like, what do you do? What's your role? What kind of company are you at? What problems are you solving with our product? If they're consumer side, right? It's like you want to ask them about their consumer related activities and what they're doing, what problems they have and how they're solving them with your product. You want to ask them what they considered as an alternative and why they chose you. And then you want to use those same words and phrases that the people who love your product, who are getting the most value out of it, you want to use those same words and phrases in your own marketing. So for example, you asked me what SparkToro did earlier. And I gave you a line, right? I said it helps you instantly discover what any audience reads, watches, listens to, and follows. That is a line from our homepage. Like that's the H1 header on the homepage. I didn't come up with it. Mm-hmm. One of our customers, in fact, a bunch of our customers sort of all had a version of that. SparkToro helps me instantly discover what my audience reads. SparkToro helps me instantly discover. I took that from them because they told me, our customers who are using, that's what you want to do for customer research, having the ability to use the words and phrases, use the language and the description, the emotion, the problem-solving nature that they describe. The same way they describe it is how you should describe it to your audience, because that's what will resonate. And I think that's the power of doing great audience research. Like you have that. And then I would strongly urge you to find other people who look like, who match up to your customer targets. Like, lots of people who fit whatever, XYZ, demographics, psychographics, values, behavioral, they are our customers. And then here's another group who are not our customers, but match all those attributes. What's the difference? Why do some people buy and others don't? Figure out what that is, and you can do incredible things, both on the product side, right? Like I talked about with the international. We don't provide data. They look just like our customers. We don't provide the data for them. That's why they're not subscribed. Like, boom, you have these epiphanies. I think that's a superpower, right? Yeah. That just makes you such a better marketer when you understand those things.
And then that piece, if I have done that research, how do I know what I put in on SparkToro? Because afterwards, I also want to, and that was always the missing piece for me. Then I want to see like, okay, so where are these people hanging out? Are you using then those words from the research on a platform like yours?
Yeah, right. Because you've asked your audience, what's your job title? What's your role? What sort of things do you do? And then you can take those. Okay, our customers don't describe themselves as architects. They describe themselves as interior designers or as landscape architects.
It's a really good example.
Whatever it is. Yep. Let's take those words and phrases, plug those into the, my audience uses these words in their profile. Click, click, type, boom, hit the search, get all the data. So I think that being able to understand the archetype of your audience and your customers, that's huge.
And then how they talk. I think
and then what they pay attention to, because now you can go reach more of them. Now you can get your brand in front of the people with whom your product resonates most. And that's what's going to, move the needle for your marketing. It's going to be way easier to get more people who look like your ideal customers than to try and reach new markets. That's not to say, as a startup, you go after new markets as well. But when you can audience lookalike, ooh, that's crazy powerful.
I love that, Rand. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and, Sandro, this is great conversation. So enjoyable talking with you about this stuff. I feel like we could do it all day.
Yes, me too. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. But where can people find more about you, and where do you want them to point to?
Sure. Yeah. So anyone can try SparkToro for free. Because of the pandemic, we saw kind of economic activity dropping, and we were like, let's just give everybody very robust free accounts. So you can go try it for free at SparkToro.com. If you are interested in following me and seeing all of my crazy talks on everything from marketing to startups to politics, I'm most active on Twitter, where I'm at Randfish. And of course, you can reach out to me direct too. I'm Rand at SparkToro.com.
Thank you very much, Rand. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Thank you so much. Bye, Rand. Cheers.
Take care.